I hope all is going well with your first CDC training module. We'll take the next few minutes to learn the difference between bacteria and viruses, specifically looking at the bubonic plague, which you are all familiar with, and polio. The bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, began in China in the early 1300s and later spread to Western Europe and Asia, where you experienced this in your most recent simulation. 25 million people died from the bacteria in the epidemic, and it did not subside until the early 1600s. The impact of the Black Plague affected different people differently. High-class citizens back in that era had a good bit of money, but that money and power became endangered. Low-class citizens, many of which died, left a high demand for labor because there was a shortage. As a result, it improved working conditions for low-class citizens. All people, as a result of the bubonic plague, learned to use better hygiene practices. A little science of the disease. The bubonic plague is caused by a bacteria. The bacteria attach to fleas, and the fleas attach to rats. In this time, rats frequently came into contact with people, and as a result would infect them. Other problems with the spread of this disease were that the dead who had been infected by the bubonic plague were not disposed of properly, and this would spread bacteria. Bacteria cannot be treated with a vaccine, but instead must be treated with antibiotics if they are available for that specific bacteria. Bacteria can reproduce as fast as every 20 minutes, and bacteria can reproduce with other bacteria. The bacteria does not need to be on a host. So if the bacteria was on a dead body, it could continue to reproduce even though the person was not living. Polio, on the other hand, is a virus. Polio is caused by the simplest significant virus, and epidemics began in Europe and America in the early 1900s. The 1940s and 50s were the worst of the polio outbreak. And there are three specific types of the polio virus: the Mahoney, Lyon, and Lansing. Polio had a great impact on the people as well, just like the bubonic plague. In the case of polio, an entire generation was infected, and that was evident in the workforce. As a result, the population was smaller, people were weakened, and older people who did not get infected were able to work and had to work longer. Now, the science behind polio. Polio is caused by a virus. A virus is not a living organism. They usually get into the body through the digestive system, and from there they can move into the intestines, the brain, spinal cord, neck, affecting the central nervous system. The virus must attach to a cell, and that cell serves as the host. In the case of polio, the virus causes paralysis of the lungs. Viruses do not need to go through cell division, which you might know as mitosis, because they are acellular. They're not made of cells. Instead, they must attach to a host cell, and then they can make copies of themselves. The host cell is needed for the virus to reproduce. So, polio, or any virus, needs to be attached to a host cell to reproduce, and this is very different than the case of bacteria. So, now that you know a little bit about the difference between bacteria and viruses, we're going to ask you to take a short quiz. This quiz will be the final task in this first module, and upon successful completion, you will be able to move to Module 2, where you'll learn more about the nature of pathogens.